What's up, y'all? I'm your host, Tayler Onion, and this is Hang Time. We are back this week with a fellow Illini, Kristina Minor. Kristina is a veteran in college athletics compliance, currently serving as a senior athletic consultant with Husch Blackwell. Kristina, let's get some Hang Time. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Excited to be here and good to see you. It's been a while.
It has been a little while. Very excited to have you on today. So how did you get started? You made the jump from being on campus years and years in compliance. You made the jump over to the consultant side. Tell me how you decided to make that happen.
The very, very short version is, I had the right conversation with the right person at the right time. Had to really boil it down. The slightly shortened version is I think I'd built up a reputation for over the course of a number of years of doing good work and being a good person and caring about that work. And the experiences that I had as a senior leader during times of absolute chaos, right? You had COVID, and you had name, image, likeness became permissible, kind of, which we can get into. There were some NCAA infractions, and there was a slew of lawsuits. Like all of that, as chaotic as it was, I think helped me demonstrate value add at Hush. And so now we provide counsel to universities and athletes and their families that are navigating the same general types of the chaos that I had been living through. So I think it was a helpful transition. So wasn't necessarily looking for a job at a firm. I didn't think I would be here, but it made sense, and I was well positioned when the time came. So super, super grateful.
There's been, I feel like, a couple of folks in my network who have made that jump from either being a coach or being in compliance to Hush recently. And I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of being 30,000 foot view on campus to 60,000 foot view at Hush, where you can be able to provide the insights and expertise that you have. They presumably do not only focus on college athletics or athletics in general. It's kind of a just general consulting firm. Is that accurate?
Um, there is a consulting arm of it, but I mean, it's a I say massive because I'm not used to this side of it. It's a large law firm, and so
Yes.
there's a practice area for just about everything. Things I didn't know had dedicated practice areas for, and so there is labor and employment and commercial litigation and I don't know, psychedelic drugs. That is a practice area. Who knew, right?
Right.
But so our athletics practice is built into the higher education practice. And so I think the idea behind that, and obviously this started before I got here, was I think we have maybe 40 plus attorneys that are in the higher education group. And at some point, I think almost every institution is going to run into some sort of question or issue that is athletically related. And so it just made sense for athletics to kind of live within that higher education group. So some of it's consulting and some of it's proactive counsel. Some of it is something has gone wrong and we need help. So everything shy of suing the NCAA, which we're not doing.
So recently, Hush released a report, and this is, as I understood it, the fifth year of this report. So while the athletics practice is relatively new, this focus on college athletics within the higher education practice does not appear to be a new, I mean, new-ish. I guess 5 years is still kind of new. But the report is titled "A Continued," R is in parentheses, so revolution, evolution of college athletics. What is, I guess this it predates you, but what do you think was kind of the motivation for Hush to come out with that report? And then maybe what were some of the key themes and goals of the 2025 version?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll say the witty title is as compliments of my colleague. But if you wanted to call it something, I mean, you could call it "Continued Shenanigans 2025 Edition" and be completely accurate to kind of describe what is happening in the landscape. In general, the goal is to provide folks with a broad overview of the athletics landscape. So beyond kind of traditional NCAA compliance and even beyond just Division 1, which I think is kind of what people assume that everyone is talking about. There are a lot of schools, there are a lot of athletes, there's a lot going on that is not Division 1, that is not FBS or Power 5 or Power 4, kind of however you want to categorize it. Uh, so we absolutely cover, the house settlement, which we can get into a little bit more later. name, image, likeness, eligibility rules, transfers. But then we also have, we take an objective look at rules affecting the participation of transgender athletes, which is something that is in this fifth edition, and also the financial realities of whatever this new pending Division 1 model is supposed to look like, which is also new. So it's trying to really inform folks and kind of give, we're not going to get super into the weeds because you'd be reading this stuff for days. But just kind of about what is going on. What are some things that I, as an institution, I, as a coach, I, as an athlete, need to be thinking about at my respective college or university to make sure that we're in the right space now, but then also well positioned to be in a good space moving forward.
Or again, so the first one would have been 2020, I think, is that or 21 maybe?
Sounds right.
Uh,
That's before my time.
Somewhere in there. We were talking about this a little bit offline, before we started recording. The landscape has shifted dramatically. You touched on some of this stuff that has happened even in the last 4 or 5 years in college athletics with NIL, with COVID and the COVID waivers happening. How, if you can possibly put it in some sort of a nutshell, how has the landscape shifted since even just last year's report?
Yeah, I mean, I think the landscape has shifted in the last 4 or 5 weeks, much less the last 4 or 5 years. Obviously, name, image, likeness, and employment from whether or not student athletes or employees, like those conversations have been happening for years. And I think we've kind of been dancing around. I say we, industry wide, have been kind of dancing around like, what exactly does that mean? And what do we have to do one way or the other? So that hasn't gone away. I think what's very new is this onslaught of lawsuits by individuals that are essentially using the courts. And I'm not saying anybody's a bad person, they shouldn't be doing it. And again, we can get into that. There's a reason, kind of for all of this, good, bad, or indifferent. But the lawsuits for individuals challenging NCAA rules or waivers, which we had never seen. So there used to be an agreement that these are the rules, everyone agrees more or less, and you stay kind of within your process. And then when you reach the end of the line and no more appeals, like, okay, you might not get what you want, but that's the end of it. And now courts are being treated as like a second appeal. And it's not, and some of the lawsuits that we're seeing and some of the decisions that are coming out and preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders, it's not necessarily saying the NCAA did something illegal. The decision was, I don't like it. I disagree with the NCAA, so student athlete can have more eligibility. Now that is very much a watered down version of kind of what's happening, but that's what people are seeing. And so all you need is one person to think, oh, okay, if I don't like the decision, I'll exhaust my appeals, then I'll go sue, and then I'll get a judge to just give me my eligibility back. It's a lot more complicated than that, but results wise, like that's what it looks like, which kind of triggers others to kind of go and kind of ask for the same thing, different states and different jurisdictions. So now you have this just state by state, court by court. What is the rule? We don't really know.
As you're describing all that, I'm thinking how how do generational factors play into some of this stuff? Because I feel like we're in, just as you said, previously there was an agreement. If something doesn't go your way, you get to the end of the rope. It just kind of is what it is. Like you might not agree with it, but that kind of is what it is. We've moved into this space where really as a society, but particularly within college athletics, we're very litigious. And it's very much a space where, I don't like the outcome of that and it must be wrong. Like that, it just
Mhm.
can't be right. I'm going to find somebody who's going to argue on my behalf or advocate on my behalf to get it reversed or flipped or whatever. And it has to, I mean, it just, if you're the NCAA, you got to feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose
Oh
at all
yeah.
times because of all these individual cases that are starting to come forth. And I think, probably the first one that kind of set this precedent to do so was maybe cost of attendance right after. That's the first one I can think of that would have been right after I finished undergrad that kind of came out as an individual who said, whatever it was they said that got then cost of attendance and meals and some of these other things. I'm curious to know from your perspective how do you see, I guess, some of those trends generationally? And I'm thinking of the greatest generation and the baby boomers who are much more prone to listen to authority, to hear
Mhm,
rules and a set of rules and say, okay, that's it, right or wrong. It is what it is.
mhm.
I think the Gen X, millennials, now Gen Z, the younger we've gotten, the more generations that are starting to come up, the less likely to listen to authority it seems they're becoming. How much, I guess, do you see that factoring into some of these decisions to pursue legal action?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think it also kind of stems from even before you get to the litigation piece of the policies and the procedures and kind of what the environment looks like on campus. To your point, and even when we were, student athletes, it was you will show up at this time, you sign this piece of paper, you ask no questions, and then you can go home. And like we didn't think anything of it. That's what you did. And I think some of it was beneficial that we operated that way. And I think for a lot of student athletes, which are now, I think, as fully functional, professional adults, like that was problematic. Like I think there was still a lot that was going on in the, for lack of put up or shut up, era of some of it wasn't okay,
Mhm.
right? And it got so bad for not everyone, but enough where they're like, my only recourse is the court or litigation or, Office of Civil Rights or something because the system that's in place isn't protecting me in the way that it should. And I think there's for some of that, it is absolutely legitimate. Yes, that was the only place to go. But I think the unintended consequences and the ripple effects of that are okay, this A was really bad and that needed to get handled. Well, this is sort of bad, but I'm gonna use the same method. And so
Mhm.
it just gets more and more, I don't wanna say watered down, but for lack of a better term, like some of these things are absolutely serious. Some of them not so much,
Mhm.
but the language is being used exactly the same way, right? And I
Mhm.
certainly never wanna make light of any of this, but, throwing things at student athletes, not okay, right? Abuse, getting yelled at, depending on how and, the context of that, may or may not be the same, but they're still saying abuse, right? So the same language is being used. And I think all of that kind of, and I say all that to say, like, it trickles into other areas where student athletes, individuals, coaches, even, but like, I don't want to say that student athletes are, doing anything wrong in this particular context, but it's where we're using the same inflammatory language without a clear understanding of, okay, well, what does that mean? And is it that bad? And
Mhm.
even if you got to the end of the actual decision, the amount of money, time, and very high emotions that it costs you to get there, it's not even worth it anymore.
Right.
So now it's just like, okay, well, what do we do in the interim? Somebody says something. Is it true? Is it not? What happened? Now we have to investigate, and the system that's in place isn't working, if there's a system at all. So now what do I do? And no one is giving me that answer. Like, I have to go find it on the outside. And it's just, okay, this is just currently like, this is where we went. This is where we went for the answer. Um, I think anecdotally, and this is an absolute side note, this is absolutely personal take. Somewhere along the lines, the student athlete experience, like judging whether it was good or bad, changed from learning to happy, right? Like, I'll say my experience was not fluffy. It wasn't intended to be fluffy. Like, it was
Correct.
work. It was hard. I learned a lot. Blood, sweat, tears. Like, we kind of use it just like, oh, blood, sweat, and tears, but like that was real.
Mhm.
But it made me better on the other end. And I don't think anybody ever asked me if I was happy. How do you feel? Are you happy? Like, I'm not sure my coach ever asked me that. But it was like, are you learning? Are you growing? But now it's, are you happy? Because if you're
Mhm.
not happy, something must be wrong. We have to fix it. And so I don't know how we got here, but now we're here and it's just okay, I am not enjoying myself 24/7, therefore something must be wrong. And I'm going to go find a sympathetic or an empathetic ear that maybe understands what the lifestyle is
Mhm.
and will rule in my favor on something they may or may not have any idea of like what the experience is. Like this is so wrong. Student athletes are getting up at 5 and blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, because that's the only time you got to practice. I don't because you got to go to class.
Mhm.
So this is what it is, but without having that context, I mean, it's firestorms left, right, and center.
Yeah. I'm gonna offer since you did, I'm gonna offer personal perspectives
Please.
as well. I think again, this is my perspective, my opinion, but I think it's fueled by 2 things, and I'm gonna weave this back into the generational stuff because when we were I mean, let's say the kids who are in college today are 10, 12, 15, however much younger than us. Those kids, I feel like I can remember specifically when I was in college, I remember a big focus on the participation generation. And
Mhm.
all of these kids are showing up for their field day at school. And instead of the first, second, third place ribbons, now everybody has to get a ribbon because they feel bad that they finished dead last, but they showed up and they participated. And I think there is there's something to that. And there's something to be able to tell a kid, hey, you finished in dead last, but it was so brave of you and so courageous of you to show up today and run your hardest. Like, that's really great. That's the conversation. We don't need everybody to get a medal. We don't need everybody to get a ribbon. But now, those are the kids who are in college and they grew up expecting the ribbon or the whatever it was. I think that is also multiplied to the nth degree by social media.
Mhm.
Because now not only am I seeing the other kids at my field day who are getting first, second, and third place and I didn't get anything, but I'm seeing my thousands of followers who seem to be having a great time or my, friends from my club teams or my AAU teams who went to these other schools and it seems like they're having a good time and this happened to me and it doesn't feel so great. So I the Gosh, the generational differences and the generational impacts, this stuff is so interesting to me, and I don't often I'm not a legal, specialist by any means, nor I have 0 legal knowledge, we'll put it that way. But I think to view it and to think about some of these generational trends, impacts, whatever, through a legal lens, and how did we get to the point where we're now being so litigious and that even when something doesn't go my way, that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It must mean that I was wronged is so interesting to consider.
That's a really good point. A couple of things. One, I love the part about the conversation, which I don't think we have the conversation because it's a lot easier to be like, okay, there's people crying in my office. Okay, here's a tissue, here's a trophy, here's a pat on the back. Like, good job, out you go. And I think it does bring up an interesting point, and at some point land the plane and tie this back to the legal regulatory framework. Um, but this idea that anything is like an isolated incident or an issue, and it's not, right? Like if we're talking about name, image, likeness, we're not just talking about, oh, there's this NCAA rule that is outdated. Like it's so much more complicated than that. And I think this is kind of where we collectively find ourselves in a game of whack-a-mole, where one thing pops up and I have to find and fix that issue without either seeing the other issues or realizing like I fixed that one, I just made this one worse. Right. And it's just like this constant because we don't have time to like sit down holistically, comprehensively think through, okay, where are all the avenues? Like a 360 view of the ramifications of whatever decision, whatever rule, whatever policy, but we treat them like individual pieces. And then you end up with something else. And then you end up with something else. And then everyone's like, all right, no one has been happy. No one has got what they really wanted. I'm going to court
Mhm.
because that is the only place left to try.
Yeah.
And it is. It's like that. I mean, that's it. There's nothing left after that. And here we are.
Yeah. Gosh, I could spend the next hour just talking about this stuff alone, but for the sake
No,
of
brought that
time.
perspective into it though. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, now I mean, what you were saying brought that up to me. I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole tonight and see
I'm here for it.
how did we get here? But anyway, so for the sake of time, I'm gonna move forward, and we've talked a little bit about NIL and the House versus NCAA case. We haven't explicitly talked about that, but we've alluded to it a couple of times. So for listeners who are not up to date, could you share a quick breakdown, quick overview of that House versus NCAA case and some of the implications that it has?
Yeah, and I'll do my best to kind of put it in like non-legal speak so that it makes sense, which has to make sense for me too, right? So at a 50,000 foot level, what we're calling house is a consolidation of three cases, and they're all antitrust class action suits filed around 2020, 2021 against the NCAA, all related to some various restrictions about student athletes' ability to earn money. So the three cases are House, Hubbard, and Carter. They're named after student athletes. We call it House, but if you were looking for like, where's the settlement? And you actually like went to a legal database, you're not going to find it. I think the actual term is like in Ray college athlete NIL litigation, I think is the actual name. But that's the consolidated. Like that's where we are right now. And so you've got the plaintiffs, those who are doing the suing, that are various classes of thousands of current and former student athletes, various sports, various years of graduation, those kinds of things. But there's very specific criteria that individuals have to meet in order to be part of that class. We won't get into like exactly who belongs to which class because that's a whole thing. Um, but that's part of the case is plaintiffs decide who is in the class based off of similarities. And so you've got the plaintiffs on one side, so classes of current and former student athletes. On the other side, you've got the defendants. So you've got the NCAA, like the actual national office, and then you've got at the time where these were filed, the Power Five conferences.
Mm.
Those SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Pac 12, and Notre Dame. And so it didn't matter who did what. Those are like that's who's being sued. Um, and so now we have one settlement, but it's really two parts. I think this people kind of mush the two together. So there's two parts to this. There is a back damages for harm that was done, alleged harm that was done, and there's a settlement that governs like rules and policies and things moving forward. So the back damages piece, like 2.6, 2.68, something like that $1 billion. That is back damages, harm done. That is not current student athletes are getting billions of dollars. Not there yet. Um, the injunctive relief settlement agreement is the forward-looking piece, and that's where you're getting this like house payment, NIL payments, new rules. Um, Totally different, kind of how those two things operate. And so in it, other than just the very large number, $2.6 billion is about to go out the door, assuming this whole thing is approved. I should probably preface with that. It has not been approved yet. It's been preliminarily approved. There was a final approval hearing, I want to say a couple of weeks ago. The Judge Wilkin, had some concerns, issues that she ordered the parties to go handle. And they have both agreed on, and it was about roster limits, which I'll talk about in a second. So they have submitted their final proposed order. We have come to this agreement to address the concerns that the judge brought up. And that was filed a few days ago, last week. So at this point, it's just, are we done now? So everyone's kind of waiting on the edge of their seat. And it's like, okay, so it's approved. It's approved. And she can quite literally do what she wants. So she could approve it. She could say, nope, everybody go back to the drawing board. I hope it's not the case. I don't think anybody has, blood pressure low enough to tolerate that, but it could happen. So who knows? But that's aside. So anyway, the injunctive relief settlement piece. So I'll just go over some of the new rules. One, no more scholarship limits. Oh, and this is only it only applies directly to the defendants. And so the Power Five conferences, Power Four, whatever, they have to do this. The others in the Division One can opt in if they want to, and into the injunctive relief. Some have, some haven't, and that's an annual decision, so we'll see. But new rules, so no more scholarship limits. It was like tennis. When women's tennis had 8, men's tennis had 4.4, gymnastics had like 12. All of those are gone. They're being replaced by roster limits. So it gives institutions the ability to provide more funds for education, but also limits the rosters, which created this most recent kind of delay in approval and issues. There were a lot of objectors to the settlement agreement. walk-ons, those that had gotten cut because of the pending approval. So that was the thing that the judge said, okay, you need to go come up with a solution. So we'll see what she says about that. But in addition to that, I mean, there's roughly 90 pages of new Division I rules that will change, mostly focused on eliminating restrictions to student athletes, name, image, likeness activities. So old rule, well, old-ish. Student athletes can't advertise their own camps and clinics, can't put their names, on their businesses and those kinds of things. Those will presumably go away with the approval of the settlement. The one thing that the big thing that everyone's talking about is like, okay, schools can now pay student athletes. Like, to do what? Well, to show up. I'm sorry. Like, we're gonna call a spade a spade. It is to do the things that they were coming to school to do anyway. And now it's focused on the name, image, likeness piece. So, billboards, commercials, even the schedules that, here's your competition schedule and here's a photo of the team. Like, that's name, image, and likeness. So, which again, that part makes a lot of sense to me. If you are going to use my face, your face, not really mine because my sport didn't make any money, but that's neither here nor there. But if you're going to use somebody's face in order to promote a business and institution, you should get permission to do so. Permission is one thing, permission plus a paycheck is something else, but that was part of the settlement agreement. And so this is not, court says that you were wrong. This is a settlement agreement. So the parties have agreed that these are the terms that we're all okay with, and then we're done. So I think some people are like, oh yeah, you lost, you won. It's like, well, no, you both kind of lost something because it's compromise. And the judge is only ruling on, is this compromise fair and reasonable? That's it. If she doesn't approve it, and then we got to go to court, and then we have to start making legal arguments, but we're not there yet. And hopefully we don't have to get there. But anyway, so Division I schools can provide, they're not required to, they can provide student athletes with direct payments and benefits above what is currently permitted by NCAA rules. Now, everything above that, it's permitted and it counts against this cap. We call it a pool. It's quite literally a pool of money that institutions can use at their full discretion. Use it all, don't use any of it, decide how you want to divvy it up. And what I will say, it's an arbitrary number. So this isn't saying and so the number for this year, and there was a big calculation that went along with it, it's about $20.5 million. Now, that is not saying that the schools get $20.5 million. That's just saying you can provide up to $20.5 million.
Each individual school can provide up to 20.5 million.
Now, where's that money coming from? Great question. I have no idea. Most of them don't either. So there were never really a ton of schools that were operating in the black anyway, irrelevant to this. And it's just, again, this is not saying, the court is not saying, okay, here's money set aside for this. It's just, if you want to, you can provide up to this amount, however you want to. Great. Now, the nitty gritty and the complexities of all that is what counts, how, when, what agreements are going to go into those things. All of those things we don't need to get into, but for all intents and purposes, schools can pay student athletes, supposed to be for the use of their name, image, likeness, and promotional activities, right? So we're all going to go to a donor event, right? Remember, like the team, go meet with this person, show up at this event. Sure, those are promotional activities, and that kind of goes into, in theory, of what the house payments, that's what those are for. That number will go up every year, and it will be recalculated every I think it's 3 years. Again, I don't know where schools are going to get this money. They're going to figure it out, or they don't have to provide it all, right? So again, it's permissive. You can provide up to this amount. Now, depending on the sport and the level, and I'm sure you've heard coaches say, we have to do this. You might have to from a competitive standpoint, but legally you don't have to, per the settlement. Now, there's a whole bunch of other things and implications that come with this. Is how does Title IX apply?
Yes.
Right. So the back damages calculation, that was a court approved. Here's the breakdown. 75% of that money goes to football. 15 goes to men's basketball. 5 goes to women's basketball, 5 goes to everybody else. And so the immediate was like, this isn't fair. And we're like, whoa, whoa, that's back damages, that's past harm.
Right.
And that is tied very specifically to whatever the class, issue was.
Mhm.
Um, Moving forward, now some institutions are using that same calculation as justification for, okay, well, that's the court approved that, then this should be fine.
Mhm.
From a Title IX standpoint, there isn't guidance that says, yes, absolutely, this is fine, or no, this is not okay. There was guidance that came out from the Department of Education in January that said, the house payments need to be distributed proportionately like you would a scholarship.
Mhm.
Like, here's your participation numbers, and here's the scholarship money. Um, New administration, Department of Education, rescinded that guidance. They didn't replace it with anything yet, so there is no guidance. And so that's the okay, so what do I do?
Mhm.
And so that's the phone call that we get is okay, tell me what am I allowed to? Right? It's like classic, like I want a yes or no. It's like, well, we don't have one. I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but based on case precedent, based on the guidance that we have, here's how this might work for you. I think one big thing that we've been telling schools is like you have to know where you are now, right? So like, oh, does this kind of get set on us? Like, wait, that's a yes or no question. Fine. The how, great. But where are you now? Are you
Mhm.
in compliance now? Because if you have a big gaping hole now, that's a larger risk to kind of play in the gray versus a, yep, every decision that we've made is defensible. Okay, you might have more flexibility to play in the gray until
Mhm.
we get more guidance, if we get more guidance. So that's a lot of it. International students, that's a whole other thing.
Right.
The vast majority of them are on F1 visas. F1 visa rules, which have absolutely nothing to do with NCAA rules, prohibit unauthorized employment. So what are they supposed to do?
Mhm.
Right? And so there's just this huge gray area, which I don't, it just gets wider and wider of how and how much and who does this apply to and what is the enforcement behind it, which we still don't know. Fair market value assessments. What's fair market?
Right.
Who decides? Now,
Yeah.
Deloitte is supposed to do it. So they are the entity that is managing this like clearinghouse. So
Mhm.
student athletes are required to disclose their NIL agreements. Institutions are required to disclose their NIL agreements. Um, Now, the fair market value kind of assessment evaluation applies to third party agreements. So if you go sign an endorsement deal with pizza shop on the corner, that would be subject to a fair market value assessment.
Mhm.
What happens if you disagree? Or Deloitte says that you've signed a deal above the I don't know what happens, right? And
Right.
no one does.
Right.
There's supposed to be a designated enforcement entity that is managing this. We don't know who it is. We don't know what it is. And we're not really sure what the policies and procedures and parameters are with that yet. TBD, right? It's like, what do we do? How do we prepare? Like, I don't know who's going to enforce this. So
Right.
we're not really there yet, which becomes really interesting. And it's permissible now to send out, NIL agreements, have student athletes sign them, send them back. Now you're bound. It's obviously contingent on the approval. So that is happening literally right now. And the only caveat is the payment can't show up in a bank account until after July 1. But
Mhm.
other than that, I mean, it's hate people use the term wild, wild west, but like it's wild.
Yeah. That's what I just was gonna so things are going well. That's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
Smooth sailing. This
Right. Okay, so I want to talk about kind of what athletic departments, athletic directors, how, from your perspective, they should be thinking about some of these things. But specifically, I guess what I want to know is for if this case is the defendants we talked about being only the Power Five, now Power Four institutions at Notre Dame, why, if I am an FCS school, if I am a D1 FBS not in the Power Five, A, why would I want to be? Because I don't have $20.5 million to be spending anyway. And B, I guess what are the advantages if you're outside of the Power 4, what are the advantages to opting in? Because it hearing all of that only seems like a disadvantage aside from competitive recruiting advantages, of course. But in theory, those already exist because of resources and facilities to begin with. So why I'm just it doesn't make sense to me why you would opt in to try and compete with somebody who you're really not even competing with anyway.
I mean, I think you just spelled out like the last, I don't know how many years of this conversation, right? Because it was, is it all, are we all one division one? Or should the power four just go break off and, be
Mhm.
1A or we already have a 1A, but you know what I mean, right? Like, should there now be four divisions or whatever the case? Like that very same question and argument has been made of, okay, does this really make sense? I mean, the only explanation I have is it's competitive, so there are, particularly in basketball. I think football is a just a different beast all in its own. Um, but you take the basketball tournament, both men's and women's, very good teams are not in the power five or power four. So for them, and again, it's kind of, it goes back to like you can't play whack-a-mole and try to like take something in isolation or like, oh, this sport at this school, yeah, but you're tied to 16, maybe 20, maybe 30 others where your priorities are very different. The competitive nature of your sport and your area and your conference are very different. So it might become, okay, this is critical to, let's just say men's basketball, right? Like this is very critical to men's basketball at X institution, which is also very critical to the institution, right? Like if that is the premier money maker, that is the thing that draws students to go to that school because they want to be part of that. Like again, that has implications and ramifications that are totally unrelated to athletics, but it matters. So for them, it's a okay, my coach says that this is an absolute necessity, which means it's a necessity to athletics, which means at this school, it's a necessity to the university and the university president, or your $10 million donor or whatever it is. So it's not like a I can't wait to spend 20 more $1 million that I don't have. I am being told by whoever I'm being told, expert or not, that bad things will happen and we won't be able to sustain our programming, our institution at the level we want to unless we do this. I don't think anybody's particularly excited about this.
Right.
Other than the student athletes that are cashing in, which okay, you know what? I don't blame the student athletes for this. I think we, again, adults in the room, have created the chaos and the shenanigans. Great. Take your check. Take your check.
Right.
Do your financial aid, financial literacy. Please understand how money works, understand what a savings is, cash it, get your degree, and go. Like, great. I'm happy
Mhm.
for them. They're stressing me out, but I'm happy. Like, fantastic.
Yeah.
The institutions and the departments and the main campus and athletics campus, like y'all need to get on the same page. And I
100%.
understand that, like, right, and we've all been there. Athletics moves at a much quicker pace than main campus. We just do. Um,
Mhm.
and this is probably not the time to say everybody take a timeout because you can't, right? Like there's no pause button. There's no like everybody go huddle up in the corner. Like this is moving while you're trying to figure out what to do, but you have to figure out what to do.
Mhm.
What is a priority for the athletics department and who's setting that priority? What is a priority for the university? University president, the board, the provost, whatever. And then figure out, okay, I mean, this is, I can sit here and backseat drive all day because I got all the time in the world, right? So this is not like everyone's doing it wrong and I got an answer. It's just, what to do when you can. You have to figure out why you're doing what you're doing, what your philosophy is going to be. Because even if you get through 1 year putting out fires, constantly putting out fires for 10 years is that's not a way to live.
And that well, and I
That's
think
not.
so many have been doing that for the last 5 years. Really, if we wanna go back and look, like, starting with COVID, that was like, there were some fires being put out before, but they were more isolated incidents, I
Mhm.
think. Whereas now since COVID, it was you got to put out this fire of how are we dealing with our student athletes, and you start to shift back. Then it's okay. How do we put out the fire of having fans back in our arenas? And what if one of our athletes gets sick? Then is everybody not able to show up and compete because of these isolation and all these rules? And then we roll right into NIL and all of these other pieces. Like the fires are nonstop.
Yeah.
It's just hard to it's hard to imagine what things will look like 5 years down the road, which is another before we shift into kind of our wrap up, I wanna ask in terms of long-term sustainability for college athletics, what is at risk right now for college athletics as we know it? And what is maybe going to be advantageous as it's reimagined because of these lawsuits?
Well, I mean, I'll take it in reverse. I think what's advantageous, I think, is right. Because I think I've just been like doom and gloom for the last 45 minutes. Which is really interesting if you're a giant nerd and like, problem solving and chaos is your jam, which it's my jam. So this is
Yeah.
fine. But I think when stuff like this happens, and well, it's stuff like this, which has never really happened to this level, because I think the underlying question is like, is the collegiate model working? Is it necessary anymore? Which I think is an incredibly philosophical question, um, which in my mind gives the decision makers, whomever they may be, an opportunity to get it right. We should have been talking about I was not at the table, but like we collectively should have been thinking long term, does this make sense? Which again is very hard to do with 1,000 members and all sorts of things. And now the court's telling you fix it.
Mhm.
The judge is saying fix it. I don't care how you fix it. You better fix it or you're coming back here. Right?
Mhm.
Like to put it really plainly. It's like, okay, you're now being forced to fix it, so what are we gonna do? Right? And this whole like, well, me and my, like that's not working if you're gonna maintain this shared governance, everybody agrees, because very clearly we're not all agreeing. And even if we do agree, as soon as I get something I don't like I'm taking it out, which is how we got here.
Right.
But again, advantageous, like there's a chance to get it right, to decide, okay, are student athletes students? Real question.
Mhm.
Whether it's my personal opinion doesn't matter. Um, but from a large standpoint, does this make sense? Do we just need a European soccer model? And you go to school if you want to.
Yeah,
Does football
gosh.
need to be removed because it's so different? Maybe. But if you do that, you can't just remove the sport and somehow football and soccer and swimming are all students that are governed by the university policies, procedures, rules. So like you got to figure out what are student athletes? Because
Right.
this whole they're in a group all by themselves is not working because they're not.
Mhm.
They're being governed by 3, 4, 5 different entities. So
Mhm.
figure out what they are, which I think is advantageous for everybody. Is we
Right.
figure out what to do. So that'd be like that is like the worst, happy sunny moment I think I've ever had. Like, oh, this is so great. I have more work. Sorry. There's a lot. Even just from a purely financial, I don't know how this is sustainable.
Yeah.
I really don't. I will fully admit when I don't know something, I'll just tell you I don't know. I don't know where this money is coming from.
Right.
Toothpaste is out of the bottle, right? This
Yeah.
whole like, well, coaches make so much money. I was like, you can't just cap coaches' salaries. They tried that, sued, got sued, lost.
Yeah.
So that is no longer like that's not a solution. So the enterprise gets more and more expensive, but where are the dollars coming from? So schools are, kind of reimagining what ticket revenue looks like and just revenue streams in general and what do we do from a development standpoint. So like it's an opportunity for creative problem solving, which I think if anybody's working in this industry and not head of the table, you learn a lot really quickly when shit has gone wrong.
Percent.
You
Yeah.
learn very quickly. So it's a great opportunity to anyone's like, I still find this interesting and I'm not completely burnt out yet. Great, more power to you. Um, so financially, I mean, forget athletics for a second. Like universities are fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
without athletics concerns at all. They are already fighting for their lives.
Mhm.
Then you want to top on, I don't like the recruiting rules. If I'm a university, I was like, I don't care.
Right.
Just like I'm not worried about this.
Right.
But some very much they have to be. Um, can we sustain 30 some sports? You've got schools that are adding sports, which I get. So some are adding them because they just want to add them. Some are adding them for Title IX reasons. But it's like, oh, okay, well, now our numbers match. Student athletes are expensive. Like they're like, oh, they make in theory, they make so much money. I was like, y'all cost a lot of money. Like
Right.
you are some very expensive students. So again, like, oh, we're gonna fix one problem. Our Title IX numbers are off. And to create another problem
Yep.
is if you can't support the new sports or the old sports at the same level and you drop something else technically safe,
Yeah.
right, anymore. And I say safe, like no one is coming and banging down the door,
Right.
but you're opening yourself up to challenges.
Right.
You say like you are not doing something right that you are legally required to do.
Yep.
Not necessarily like okay, the first step is not scrap stuff, right? Like it's a very long process to get from beginning of a challenge to the end, but it's also a very expensive challenge. The reputation, implications are fairly high. Also, I think most of us got into this because we cared, right? Like
Yeah.
there was a reason we wanted to do it. Does that still exist? Like that's my thing. Is like that's my big risk is does this still exist? Like, the way that I think about, the student athlete experience, like, does it matter anymore?
Mhm.
And even if it matters, where does it matter?
Right.
And again, I don't think anybody is, I don't think anybody's being a terrible person or just not caring.
No, yeah, it's
It's
just
just that it's real. This
yeah.
Yeah, I would love it if all student athletes, like, all learned and had life lessons, they were challenged a little bit, but in a really safe space and all these kinds of things, like
Mhm.
you may not be able to do that for 20 something sports and exist at the same time.
Mhm.
So it's someone cut the sport or someone did something and like, you're horrible. And this is like, it might be unfair, but it's
Mhm.
not that like, great, let me kick my feet on the desk. I don't care. Like there's so many things that go into these decisions. Um, it's so much. It's so
Yeah.
much. I have nothing but respect for ADs and university presidents. Like, God bless you. Are you okay? Do you need a hug? This is a lot. It's a lot. So we're doing our best to try to help navigate and narrow some of the questions of what do I do? I'm like, okay, let's pack it down a little bit. Here's this, bite-sized pieces. Here are the
Mhm.
things you can control. Here are the questions that you need to be prepared for to be proactive as you can be. When ish hits the fan and we got to start all over, like, all right, we got to start all over, but at least you had a plan and you can pivot when you have a starting point.
Yeah.
You're like head cut off anyway. Like, where are you going?
Right. Right.
I didn't land that plane, but here we are.
No, that's that there's so much to consider, and I think societally, like, how do we get here, right? It's the constant drip that hollows the stone, like, this stuff didn't happen overnight, it's been building for the last really 10, 15, 20 years, and now this is the point that we're at, so but, okay, shifting into kind of our final couple questions here. Number 1, how can listeners access, the full Husch Blackwell report that we referenced earlier?
It is on our webpage. Thank you for asking. Hushblackwell.com. Honestly, if you just type in Hush Blackwell athletics, that's the page and it's right there. Click download. There's also a button on that page. If you're a parent, student athlete, pretty much anybody you have a question, you want to ask a specific question, please by all means can subscribe to listservs. Um, I was about to say, like, follow me on social. Oh my God. Ugh. Don't do that because all my stuff's private, so that's not a thing. Uh, but you can follow Hush. We post a lot of like legal alerts, and we try to keep people informed in small bites as well as kind of an annual years. So all of that stuff gets posted on LinkedIn and sent out. Obviously, if you're part of the listserv, you'll get that. Also, if you have a question, my email's first name, last name. Like we're not hiding. I do not have a team of support staff that's like answering my emails. You got a question, just ask us. We're around.
Okay, namesake of the show. If you could get some hang time with any woman in sports, who would it be and why?
Ooh. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I'm totally obsessed with Asia Wilson right now, and I have watched and rewatched her new commercial an embarrassing number of times. It's amazing. But I gotta give a shout out for women's tennis, and I'm a cheat also. Williams sisters.
Of course.
They're just unbelievable, not only athletes, but people and like entrepreneurs and creatives and family members, and they just do all the things. And so I think they're an absolute fantastic kind of example of, not being a monolith. Like you want to go do something, go do it. Like there is no box. You must be an athlete at all times, or you must be this, that, and the other thing. Like, no. You can do all the things if you want to, or
Mhm.
them, right? So I think just watching them kind of chart their own path is amazing and super inspirational.
So true. Also, the Asia Wilson commercial, I was
It's so good.
it's so good, and I am watching like, do I need
I was like, "Do I need bright
do
pink
I need
basketball
A1s?
shoes?
Yeah, do I need A1s in the pink colorway? I think I might." They're
I'll wear
so
those with a
good.
suit, it'll be fine."
Yeah, it'll be perfect. I love it. Okay, any final insights, any final insights or words of advice, for listeners, maybe who are working in college athletics or adjacent to?
We are going to make it. We are going to be fine. We might be fine later, but we're going to be fine. This is not the end of the world. I think one important thing, yes, this is important. Yes, it's a big deal. There are billions of dollars at stake and lots of lives that are affected by this. We're also in sports. But
Yeah.
like there are a lot more boring and tragic things that we could be doing right now. So yes, it is stressful. I'm not going to minimize that at all. But like, get your game. Like
Yeah.
that's all my work. Like all that work I put in, like, look at those students. Right.
Yep.
I think they still matter. The work still matters. You are supported. Drink some water, take some time, breathe a little bit. We're gonna make it. We're gonna figure it out and we're gonna be fine.
Stay hydrated, get some sleep. I love it.
Next.
Yeah, all the things. All right, well, Christina, thank you so much for taking the time out. Again, this was I don't often think about things, from a legal perspective, so this was so fun to weave in some of the things I'm normally thinking about, like generational differences, into
Take you down the rabbit hole at any point.
yeah, listen, don't say that because I might call you and we'll just be in a rabbit hole forever, but thank you so much for taking the time and for hanging out today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. We will see you back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for tuning in.